This is Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast.
There was a guy in Switzerland who would hack into a telephone booth, and he would phone me and talk to me and tell me that, your card protection is great. I enjoy breaking your card protection more than the games. The same concepts where you make a good decision on the design work, the framework of what you're working on, the foundation, still applies today for modern software.
This is Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast. I'm Kevin Savitz. Roland Gustafsson wrote The Print Shop Companion, an add-on package for Brøderbund's popular print shop software, which added a printable calendar, font and page border editors, and other features. He first developed the program for the Apple II, then ported the software to the Atari 800 and Commodore 64. In the retro computing community, however, Roland is best known for his work on the Apple II, where he specialized in designing copy protection as well as the RWTS-18 disk format, which squeezed extra data onto the Apple's floppy disk. This interview took place on May 17th, 2016. Yeah, I feel like I'm interviewing Amelia Earhart about, the car she drove to the airstrip,
Deserted island I landed on. No.
Right. Exactly. I mean, you're an Apple II guy, right? Was it your first love? Tell me the story.
Okay. Well, let's see. Back when I was in high school, when I was 15, is when the personal computing started, mid 70s. And that was around 77, I guess, 78. And I was really interested in the Sol computer, SOL-20, I think it was called, and there was a couple others. But then I saw the Apple and the color display and everything, and I thought, ooh, that's cool. So that one, it really caught my attention and became pretty evident that I want one of these. This is pretty cool. There was one of the original Byte shops in California, or in the Bay Area. It was in San Mateo, and I found out about it, went there, and this guy sat me down behind an Apple II and said, here, type this. And I typed in a basic program, and I hit run, and I was just smitten by it. This is amazing, So my dad, he said, oh, you should take a class. And I thought, I'm only 15 years old. There's going to be a bunch of adults in this class. There's no way. I don't know. I feel intimidated by it. And it was going to cost $50. And I was, too much money. Don't spend it on me. So we came back later, or he called back, and it turns out they're going to charge $100 for it. And it was going to be a 10-week class. And I said, oh, no. But my parents insisted. And so the first class I paid attention. And from then on, I was just zooming ahead because I had nothing. Wow. It was so interesting to me. So anyway.
Did your parents know that this was your thing, or they just wanted to get you out of the house?
No. I was kind of an introvert. So, yeah. So when I was in high school, I would read about it, all classes. We had a teletype at our high school down in the basement. And just to give you an idea, there was no personal computers yet. So I helped my parents fix up a house that we moved into down there in San Mateo, and they gave me a computer with an Apple II for summer work. So, wow. Anyway, so that became my pastime, everything I was working on. That was all I really worked on back then when I was a teenager. I didn't have time for other things. It was too interesting, this computer thing. So anyway.
So you just dove into programming yourself on your own machine?
Yeah. I met Brøderbund early on. I used to go to the Apple Core users group meeting with a friend of mine. And one day both of us were kind of clueless about, his holidays, or especially obscure holidays. We didn't know what was going on. We were too busy. Really interested in what we were working on. And we showed up at the Apple Core Users Group meeting at Fort Funston in San Francisco. I believe it was Fort Funston. And we usually parked outside the parking lot. We walked in, and there was nobody in the parking lot. What's going on? Is the meeting not today? And then the founders of Brøderbund Software drove up in their Volvo station wagon, and started talking to us. And my friend Jim, he recognized them because he was a very kind of a people person, and he talked to them at various. He had met them before at one of the users groups, not the users groups, the West Coast Computer Fair. And anyway, so I ended up. They were asking about programmers, and I said, no, I was busy at the time working with an insurance software company. But then they said, we're looking for somebody to do copy protection. And I said, oh, I can do that, because I'd been doing it for another company, Strategic Simulations. And right then they turned off the engine on the car and said, oh, really? And then we went out for lunch, and that was fun. They were having problems with their copy protection guide doing level loading. So to load the next level. So I was able to get that working for them. And then I did copy protection for them for all their Apple II software until the Apple II was no more. So that was interesting.
Wow. Nice. Now, you were never an employee of Brøderbund, right?
I've always been a freelancer. And I like it that way. I like my freedom. I usually worked 9 months out of the year, 8 months, 9 months, 10 months, and took some time off and just had fun, whatever. So
nice. So I understand the Apple II was like an amazing platform for copy protection tricks because you had such direct access to
you were directly talking to the stepper motor. Mm-hmm. You had direct connection with the read-write head, and it was the same restaurant that I went out for lunch with Brøderbund when I met them in a parking lot. A few months later, or actually, was it a few months later? It was around the same time. Steve Wozniak was at that users group meeting, and I just happened to be in line with him, and he was right behind me in line. And so I picked his brain about the disk drive, and he answered a few basic questions for me, and that got me started. So,
wow.
so yeah, the ability to talk to the drive directly caused all sorts of interesting possibilities, and it was I liken it to writing haiku, talking to the disk drive, and it was a lot of fun. I just did that on my own, though. I wasn't connected to I wasn't a black hat or white hat or anything. I was just on my own doing this for Brøderbund. I wasn't in contact with pirates or other copy protection people. I tried to remain anonymous. So anyway.
Nice. And I understand you did a disk format that wasn't so much copy protection, but it was just to squeeze more stuff onto a disk.
Okay, so I figured out the constraints of what the disk 2 drive what was possible, and I said, we could probably fit more data on there. And it turns out the reason was Brøderbund had a program, Bank Street Writer, not Bank Street Writer, the word processor, but one of the subsequent programs. It didn't fit on a 16-sector disk, and so I thought, let's see if I can figure out a way to store more data on the disk. And I came up with a way that was absolutely the most efficient way of using the disk 2. And I was able to put 18 sectors per track instead of 16. And it was really fast. And I wrote it on a plane flying to Japan, actually. With my friends from Brøderbund, we were going to Japan for just a sightseeing / business trip. And that passed the time for me, the 9-hour flight there. So I came back home, typed it all in, got it working, and it was used for quite a few products. So anyway.
Nice.
Yeah. I never did hear from, I would someday like to have a conversation with Steve Wozniak about it, because he would probably get a good laugh out of it if he looked into it.
So how many, you said 2 sectors, how many bytes?
512 bytes. So instead of 16 sectors of 256 bytes, it was 6 sectors of 768 bytes. That was the twist on it. And but I designed it in a way that it was very flexible, so the programmers could use it. They had to incorporate it into their game or product as they were working on it. It was used by Jordan Mechner for Prince of Persia, for example, and I was able to work with him directly to take maximum advantage of it, and we did.
So, are you familiar today with the 4AM?
Oh yeah, they've contacted me, and I follow them on Twitter, and Yes.
That's fun. So he's just undoing what you did
Oh yeah,
years ago.
I help them as much as I can. They have questions
Yeah.
for me. I answer them. I've never, even back in the day when I was doing copy protection, I thought it was just a game, and I tried my best to keep. I was one person putting copy protection on these games and products, and then there are I don't know how many people out there. Probably weren't that many that were trying to hack into them, because it took a fair amount of commitment for the hackers to. Crackers or whatever they call themselves. So a funny story, there was a guy in Switzerland who would hack into a telephone booth in Switzerland and phone me. He somehow figured out my phone number, and he would phone me and talk to me and tell me that, your copy protection is great. I enjoy breaking your copy protection more than the games. And I developed a friendship with him, and he and his friends came out and visited me in California. And I even took them to Brøderbund so they can visit Brøderbund. They took me out to Sizzlers for dinner. I remember that. And he's a heart surgeon now. So
wow.
He was a really smart guy. He is a really smart guy.
That's amazing. Did you freelance for other companies? You mentioned an insurance company and SSI, or did Brøderbund take up most of your time once you started with them?
Yeah, Brøderbund is the longest lived by far. SSI was interesting. They used a disk operating system that I wrote right after I graduated from high school. We went on a road trip, my parents and I and my grandparents, and I sat in the back and was writing down, assembly code on a piece of paper. When I came back home and typed it in, it worked. The goal was to make a really small, fast operating system for SSI to use on their Apple II games, and it took up a third of the space of the standard DOS. And it was faster. And anyway, so that was one of my first freelance jobs. Let's see. And I also did some work for some other small companies that went out of business. Let's see. With Brøderbund, I met Presto Studios. I had never even heard of their game journeyman project before I was asked to consider doing the Mac version of the third in the series. So anyway, I don't know if you want to get that far ahead here. But after Brøderbund, it was Presto and a few other companies.
Nice. So, getting back to talking to Amelia Earhart about the car she drove to the airport in, how did you end up doing Print Shop Companion for the Atari?
So the print shop came out in 84? I believe it was 84. And I got in on the very end of it to add copy protection. And I thought, this is really cool. This is one of the first products to print graphics on paper with a printer. Wow. And we were immediately brainstorming as it was shipping, and it went really well. It was one of Brøderbund's best-selling programs, I believe. And it became evident pretty quickly that was going to be the case, that they decided we should come up with a companion program for this. And so I got to work on it immediately, and it patched the original print shop, for example. So you to allow for this extension of fonts and graphics and everything. So I was their go-to guy for hacky kind of things like that. So it was a natural for me to actually, hey, I'll do the whole product. It was my first product with Brøderbund.
Nice. So it came out originally for the Apple II.
Yes, right? The Print Shop Companion for the Apple II, and we immediately, while I was working on that, they were also finishing up the Atari and Commodore 64 versions of the Print Shop, and both 6502 processors. So they had in-house people doing those. So I said, since I had programmed the Apple II version of Print Shop Companion, I said, I'll consider, I'm not sure, I could probably do the Commodore and Atari versions. I said, let me take a stab at it. And because of the way I'd programmed the Apple II version accidentally, I had abstracted all system calls just because I thought it was neater that way. Because I had created these abstractions of the well, there really wasn't an operating system back then, but the abstraction to the talking to the hardware, it was really easy for me to do the Commodore and Atari versions. And it was actually quite a bit of fun. And I finished them in record time. because of those early decisions working on the Apple II version, not because I was able to code so quickly or anything like that, or it was the good decision on the foundation work that caused the ports to be easier. So I remember with the Commodore 64, there was a cartridge with a debugger where you can hit a little button on there and it stopped, and you could poke around in memory to see what was going on. But with the Atari at that time, we didn't have anything like that. Even though I had full access to everything that Brøderbund was using for the Atari 800, they really didn't have anything as good as that for the Commodore 64. I don't know why, but that's was the case. So it was kind of interesting debugging on the Atari 800. I actually wrote a communication system that allowed me to transfer. I did all the programming in the Apple II, and using the game port on the Apple II and the game port on the Atari 800, I created this modified serial bus thing I soldered it together myself and it communicated serially. Actually, it was, I think, two or three bits at a time. It was a little bit faster than just serial, and with automatic handshaking for maximum speed. And anyway, that was fun. But then,
I've heard that exact story from maybe 5 developers now who all simultaneously invented the same thing to develop on the Apple and send it over the joystick ports to the Atari. It's incredible.
Yeah, it was cool. It was smile inducing as I was working on it. Like, this is hilarious. Anyway, nowadays there's standard protocols that take years to develop, and we just did it all ourselves back then. It was a different era. I'm nostalgic about it in some ways, but the same concepts where you make a good decision on the design work, the framework of what you're working on, the foundation, still applies today for modern software. If you make the right decisions from the beginning, you're going to have good sailing forward. So the debugging on the Atari 800 was hilarious because I just had to kind of stare at the screen and say, and maybe I'd write some code that put bytes on the screen that would be debug information. But there was one problem I just could not figure out. What is going on? And it turns out there was an Atari expert at Brøderbund, and he told me that there's an issue where it's writing a random byte. The operating system sometimes writes a random byte to location FFF or something like that. It was 0FFF. And I said, really? So I just had to make sure my code didn't touch that memory location, and then everything was fine. But I couldn't have solved that myself. That was just out there.
Who was the Atari expert you're talking about?
I can't remember his name. I didn't hear it often enough to remember. I'm a programmer. Okay. I don't remember their number. No, sorry. I'll probably think of it later. But anyway.
All right, let me know. I just might be someone else to talk to later. So you hacked it together, and was it a royalty deal?
All my projects have been royalty deals. Even copy protection back in the day, except for a few. But I managed to get royalty deals on those, and pretty much that's all I do. I just say no to anything else. There was a couple of times where they were desperate, so I just gave them a large figure. At Brøderbund, there was something that they wanted me to do, and I said, I don't want to do it. Well, what can we pay you to do it? And I gave them, what I thought was just a ridiculous number, and they said, okay, go ahead. Okay, it took me a week, and I think it was $10,000 for a week's worth of work, and I just was shocked. Oh, I'll do this more often if you want me to. Anyway,
right.
So, but mainly royalty deals. So if it's successful, I did okay.
Nice. Well, the no debugger thing, you didn't have access to one, Brøderbund didn't know about them, but there were totally debuggers for the Atari 800 where you could drop into the...
Yeah, that's why I say I couldn't believe it. But I didn't have time to research it. There was no internet to Google anything, And since I didn't hang around with the Atari crowd, I guess there wasn't... At Brøderbund, the in-house programmers weren't necessarily connected to the users group. I mean, maybe the users groups weren't as common with Atari and Commodore. They were more consumer products. Apple II was more of the hacker product. I don't know. You probably know better than I do.
I do have a story regarding Print Shop Companion. I had it on Print Shop and Print Shop Companion on my Apple IIc, which I paid for. I did not. Well, someone paid for, but it was my mom or something. But it was not pirated. And I used Print Shop Companion to develop a font. It was like a LCD display, LED display sort of font. And I thought it was cool at the time. I'm sure now that it sucked. But anyway, and I was really proud of it, and I sent it to Brøderbund on floppy disk. Got no response. I was like, okay, they didn't like it. Months went by, and maybe 8 months later or something, I got a response from them, and they apologized. They said it was put on the inbox in someone's desk. It got lost, and they really liked it, but they weren't doing. By then they'd come out with the third graphics pack or whatever, the add-on pack, and we're not doing anymore, but. This good work, kid. You know? Anyway, so that was kind of nice. So yeah, I spent some time developing my crappy font with Companion.
That was probably one of the first font editors, I think. I'm not sure, but I remember it was interesting, the constraints we had to work into. Anyway, it was an interesting time.
Yeah, I bet. So there was the font editor and the border editor and a calendar feature that I don't really remember, but that's what it says. And a creature maker game.
Divided into 3 pieces: a head, body, and legs, and you hit the randomize button, or you can manually go between them. It was kind of fun. Simple.
Nice. Yeah. Huh. Fun. All right. So, and after that, why didn't you do more Atari stuff? You just went back to Apple?
Yeah, let's see. That was 80. When was that? That was 86, wasn't it? Does it say? Are you looking at the product page and product information page?
I'm not. I think 86.
I believe it was 86.
That sounds about right.
Let's see. In 86, what was I doing? I was working on. It was in 80. Yeah, I didn't really do much Apple II work after that. My next major project was on the Mac in 80. Wait a second. I remember doing an Apple IIc, the one with the 3.5-inch drive. I did some really fun hacks to get the Apple IIc, whatever it was called, with the 3.5-inch drive working with. I actually made old DOS work on the new 3.5-inch discs, and the libraries for the print shop came out on those as well. And yeah, I basically did code protection and odds and ends on the print shop series then, and then in '88, I worked on the Mac version of Tetris. It turns out that Brøderbund was offered Tetris. They were the agent for the guy from Russia, or the agent, software agent. I don't know. He wanted Brøderbund to publish it, and everybody was addicted to it at Brøderbund, and they really enjoyed playing it, but they thought it was too simple. And I said, oh yeah. I liked it so much. They only had it for the PC. I liked it so much that I did a low-res Apple II version in one day. I wrote it just a couple of days before Christmas, and my friends who came over for Christmas, they loved it. They were having so much fun with it. So I called it Quadris, and the people at Brøderbund, they installed it on their Apple IIs, and everybody was addicted to it and playing it. But they still said, "Nah, it's too simple." So they sent it to Spectrum Holobyte Sphere Inc. And I said, "Oh, I'll follow them over there and ask if they want an Apple II version, since I'd already programmed it. And obviously, it's not good enough, but make it fancier." And they said, Doug Carlston at Brøderbund put in a good word for me. He said, "Yeah, he's good." He knew the guys over at Spectrum Holobyte, and so I went over there and they said, "Oh, we're going to do the Apple II and 2GS versions in-house, but how about the Mac version?" And I said, "I've never programmed the Mac. I don't know. I've never programmed in C even, and I don't like Pascal." So I said, "Oh, I'll give it a try." So I ended up doing the Mac version of Tetris, and I was addicted to it as I was working on it. It was terrible. So I feel guilty, all those millions of people out there who played Tetris and wasted company time and their own personal lives wasting right now. So anyway, that was pretty amazing to have worked on that, because it wasn't done, it wasn't the name brand it is now, or was that it back then. So that was a privilege to work on that.
Nice. Yeah, no, that was a seminal game for sure. And you were there. Nice. All right. What do you do today?
For the last 7 years, which is the longest I've ever worked with one company, friends, I've been working with Ocean House Media as their lead tech, let's call me. on iOS apps and iPad apps. So back in 2009 we started, and our first product was a Singing Bowls app. Back then, the Apple Store, the App Store, only had 10,000 apps in it, and we got in then, and we thought 10,000 apps, how are we going to stand out or whatever? But Apple liked our Singing Bowls app, which is kind of like wine glasses, except they're Tibetan singing bowls, and I had never programmed on the iOS before, and it was really interesting to learn. And I by the end of the year, we got a deal to do Dr. Seuss products, and that's when it really took off. It did really well. So we've been doing Dr. Seuss books and a few other apps, but we've programmed we've got all the 55 of Dr. Seuss's original books as apps, and they've been done for quite a while. And in the last year and a half or so, we're redoing them with more animations and things to make them more fun and interesting. And we call them read and learn and read and play versions. So they usually sit at the top of the book section in the App Store. And whenever it's Dr. Seuss's birthday in March and other things like movies, Lorax came out a few years ago. Those are big months for us. So I love working on the iOS platform, and it's kind of funny. I've really grown to love Objective-C, and then Apple comes out with Swift, and to me it looks like it looks like Objective-C sort of made for Java programmers, because that's what people are learning in schools now, Java, I guess. So I've become, through the years, rather opinionated about languages, and I just like to stick with the ones I like. I've even written my own languages that we use for in-house development. But so anyway, I like Objective-C, and Swift looks like Java with Objective-C kind of forced into it, but sure. Anyway, and the programming, it's kind of funny. I started when I was talking about the original programming for the 6502 and being able to abstract things and then making it really easy to convert to the Commodore and Atari. I haven't been doing that lately with iOS because Objective-C, nobody else uses it. And the APIs are so rich on the iPhone platform and on the Android platform. They're rich APIs that the crossover is it's not as clear unless you use a third party. There are third party middlewares out there that you can use, but you don't get as much control as when you talk to the hardware directly, or not the hardware.
So you need to recode something completely, more or less.
We have Android versions of all the books, for example, and obviously it had to be reprogrammed completely in Java. I didn't do that; somebody else did it, and so those same kind of the structural design underneath it all can be similar, but even then, it's kind of funny how they diverge so much, the iOS platform and then the Java Android platform. So, but I strongly prefer iOS because that's where the money is, and it's fun. So, but I certainly have Android devices laying around as well.
Yeah. Nice. What haven't I asked you about the old days of?
Oh, wow. So long ago. Wow. I was just a kid. I would say I'm having more fun than ever now. I didn't think it was going to be possible. I worked on the Myst series as well. I reprogrammed the Mac version of the original Myst using my adventure game engine that I designed for Presto Studios. And then as a sort of an appetizer for working on Myst 3, the third in the series there. And why did I bring that up? My mind went blank. Let's see. So working on Myst 3 was a big deal. And I thought, I'm not going to be working on anything else that comes close to that, really. I thought I was kind of postpartum blues or whatever they call them. But no, working on the iOS apps with OceanS Media has been even better as far as fun. So the early days, the good old days were really interesting. Everything was a new adventure, and it was an amazing time. I feel privileged to have been part of it and meeting all sorts of people that are, in the industry, have gone on to great things in the industry. It's been really interesting. and really fun to be part of that. I consider it a privilege. After Tetris, I worked on KidPix, which was a lot of fun. The companion again. I was the companion programmer. So a successful program came out, and then I said, "Oh, really? Got my attention. I'll work on the companion." So,
was it tricky? Was it tricky at all? Taking a establishing product and then just like hacking it to add these hooks to do things that wasn't really designed to do?
Well, in the case of Print Shop, it was designed to possibly be extended, but there was a few little buglets in it. So my code patched it, and that was right up my alley as far as being a good hacker and a copy protection person. So I worked with other people's code. So patching the original one wasn't that big of a deal. And then when I programmed the Print Shop companion, I actually rewrote my own print screen drivers and everything, and I considered it a challenge to optimize and make it better. So, for example, the original Print Shop companion, my font drawing and graphic drawing routines were orders of magnitude faster than the original Print Shop because I optimized them. And so I really thrived on optimization. It was sort of a requirement doing copy protection and disk I/O. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that answers your question. I reprogrammed everything. It was interesting. We had to write our own printer drivers. So it wasn't just printer drivers. It was also interface cards on especially the Apple II. I don't remember the Atari 800. I believe there was just one way to talk to printers, if I'm not mistaken. But with the Apple II, we had to program. We had to have drivers for the cards, serial parallel port, and also for the printers. And so I worked with Corey Kosak on that and did some interesting stuff. We had to do everything ourselves.
Yeah. I think I have one more question. For someone who built his career on copy protection, do you need to think about copy protection anymore, or DRM, or is it just handled by the stores?
With Apple, it's handled by Apple completely. You don't have to do anything unless you want to add code to check to see if it's running on a jailbroken device or whatever. I've never bothered doing that. Our target audience is not,
Parents of toddlers don't have time.
Exactly. So I don't really care. If I was working on a game, maybe I would. But with the Android, I believe that you have to take a more active role in the copy protection. But it's funny, after the late 80s there, when I worked on Tetris, which was not copy protected, the Print Shop was very lightly copy protected. My stuff has not been copy protected, or the stuff I worked on. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I wasn't actively involved in it. I think in MIS 3 there was some sort of copy protection handled by another company. So it eventually became something where outside companies added copy protection, if there was any. I'm not a favor. I don't like copy protection. I prefer to be honest. Of course, that's not the way the real world operates, but I buy everything I use. So anyway.
Great. Thank you, Roland. I think I have what I need.
Okay. Well, this is my first audio interview, believe it or not, in all these years. Anyway.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
If you enjoy these interviews and would like to contribute something, I encourage you instead to donate to one of our favorite organizations, the Internet Archive, at archive.org. The Internet Archive is a nonprofit digital library with the stated mission of universal access to all knowledge. They've done incredible things to preserve computer history, including hosting thousands of programs in an in-browser Atari emulator, creating the Wayback Machine, and offering full-page scans of countless Atari computer books and magazines. Make your tax-deductible contribution at archive.org/donate.